What do I do after finding out I come from Nazis? The context is I was having a talk with my senile grandmother and I was like, wow, grandma. It must be crazy to be so old. The world has changed so much since you've been alive. She's like, yeah, about some details, and I'm like, wow, grandma, so you remember WW2? She goes on to tell me an elaborate family story I've never heard before, where my great-grandfather had to spend most of his days hiding from international police after the war and was so paranoid he barely went out to see the sun because he was an escaped refugee from the war. This is all Brazil. So apparently he fled the war to Brazil, and that's where I come from. Motherfucker. If you so choose, you can research more into your great-grandfather's story. But you don't have to do anything. Being a Nazi isn't some sort of congenital defect or a hereditary disease. Nazism is a political ideology. Your ancestor may well have been the worst monster ever to have lived. But you're not responsible for that. A lot of us Europeans are descended from Genghis Khan. That doesn't mean we owe the world an apology. Believing that your genetics make you a bad guy is what made the Nazis bad guys in the first place. Don't sweat it, you didn't do anything wrong. And if you're ever tempted to think like your great-grandpa that the world's problems have simple answers, and they all revolve around hurting the people on the bottom and obeying the people at the top, remember that you already know better. Being a Nazi isn't genetics. You can't control what your ancestors did. I bet most of us wouldn't be too happy about some of our ancestors' choices. Live your own life by your own values and don't worry about it. Haha. I am from Austria. Most people here had Nazis in their families. Here it is more a being proud of the family members that were not Nazi rather than being ashamed of those who were. Lotta Nazis moved to South America after the war. There are towns there where German is still the only language spoken. Move on with your life. Your ancestors' actions are not yours. Yeah, I'm German. I know I am a descendant of Nazis 100. Most of us are. But we can't change the past, we can only make the present and future a better place than it was before. Nothing really. You didn't do anything. Keep on being you. Unless you're a Nazi too. Then knock that off. Don't worry about it. It's been generations. I am half Japanese. I don't know if my great-grandfather killed Americans or anyone else. Life goes on. I am American now. All the way. John Oliver actually commented on this once. Something along the lines of, "You are not the worst thing your ancestors did." And I have to believe that. Because I'm English. Nothing. You didn't hurt anyone. Most of us have a monster in the family tree. Mine is a pirate. Like a pirate on the high seas. Who bit a guy's nose off? Look man. Coming from a Jew whose entire family on one side minus the grandfather was slaughtered by your grandpa's pals. It's not your fault. It may not even be your grandfather's fault. It happened and it still happens to this day. Doing seemingly justified evil shit that is politically condoned is everyday life in every country. Politics are just evil. You aren't. Take your cues from Germany. I guess. Pay respect to the memory of those who were killed. Do your best to not repeat the past. It's part of your family's past, but it's not your present or future. That's rough, man. But you are not your grandfather. You should contact the Wiesenthal Center to see if they were tracking him. The circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what we do with the gift of life that truly matters. Mewtwo. It's like a flowchart. Start with, am I myself a Nazi? If no, go live your life. Spend your life doing non-Nazi things and you're good. Don't be a Nazi. That's all. Just go on living your life otherwise. Just don't commit genocide and we're cool. Seems easy enough. Don't try to become an artist. As a Jew whose family fled to Brazil to escape the war, it's not your fault. You can't help where you come from, but you can help what you do. Get informed about fascism. Don't vote Bolsonaro. Don't be anti-Semitic. Information is key because most anti-Semitism in Brazil comes from pure ignorance. Most Brazilians have never seen a Jew and behave in a way that would make your Nazi great grandparents roll in their graves. You did nothing wrong. At some time in the future you may want to dig into this part of your family history. Or you may not. That was their life, not yours. My great-grandfather was arrested by Nazis and deported to a concentration camp. It sucks that it happens. But we can't change the past. Nazi isn't genetic. My father was a member of the Nazi Hitler Youth. So what? It was pretty much mandatory for kids living in Nazi Germany. People got over it. Germany is now a wonderful and democratic country. Maybe even more so than the now fascist-leaning USA. It depends. Are you a Bolsonarista? There's not really much you can do. If you think Jewish people with respect, then you're good. No need to worry about what your ancestors did. If she is senile, then I would just let it go. She may be talking out of her head. If you really want to know more, then just do your own research. I agree with the majority of comments here. You are not responsible for the actions of your ancestors. It's interesting though, since that's the basis for justifying reparations being paid to African Americans in the U.S. for the sins of slavery. Regardless, you've done nothing wrong and aren't accountable for the shitty actions of any of your predecessors. As long as you're not any part of a neo-Nazi movement or have empathy for them, you're good. If he fled to Brazil, he was a war criminal. The crimes of your ancestors aren't your crimes. And as so many studies have shown, outside of extreme exceptions like the neurological abnormalities leading to psychopathy, etc., people's character is mostly based on life, experience and culture. There's nothing for you to do. There's nothing wrong with you, at least relating to this. And none of what happened is in any way your fault, or your legacy. You should go back in time and kill your great-grandfather. Obviously. My grandma was in Hitler Youth. Does it influence me? No. So yeah, just keep living like you did before. Maybe listen more to her stories. But in the end you didn't do anything wrong. Since you weren't there. You can learn from your ancestors though. From their actions. That's not really that bad. Something like 50 of the world are distant relatives of Genghis Khan or one of his underlings. So what? Most people are descended from someone who either raped or killed at some point. If we all had to answer for our ancestors, we'd all be in trouble. It's highly unlikely anyone has zero evil ancestors if you go back far enough. It's only weird if you make it weird. Nothing? You are not your ancestors. Just do not be a Nazi yourself. Don't be a Nazi. The end. Chill. It's an idea, not a race. Live your life and don't be a Nazi. You happily consider that the fact your ancestors were assholes while you're not is a wonderful sign that progress is real. Things really can get better. And that the people who fought against them didn't fight in vain. Every human alive has ancestors that were straight up monsters. No use in feeling shame about it. Just don't become one yourself. Everyone's ancestors have blood on their hands. That blood does not pass on.